drive me batty.
And welcome back to Movie Conversations. This is Brian Ritchie, and joining me as always is Nora St. John. Good morning, Nora. How are you today?
Very well, Brent. Actually, I got a little bit of a cold, so if I sound funny, that's why. Just so you know.
There's a
Otherwise, I'm
reason.
fine. There is a reason. It's allergy time here. I'm living in the Sacramento Valley, which is the agricultural breadbasket of half the universe, and all of the grass, which is about actually is about waist high at this point, is
Oh,
blooming.
geez.
So I'm going to sound a little funny.
I found the same thing coming back from Phoenix. We were
Mm,
just at Phoenix Pilates on tour, and when I was there, no issues. It was dry. I never thought about it. I didn't think about
yeah.
allergies at all. I come back and now it's like I've got my tissue with me at all times and I feel fine. I'm just thinking, why is my nose? Oh
Oh,
yeah, okay. Those
is that
histamines, yeah,
possibly?
they're kicking a little bit. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, I'm excited about today. If you can hear it in my voice, I'm a little bit excited. In in writing up our topic list and everything, we have our overall list. And I saw that today is a milestone. Today is our 50th episode. This is the end of season 1.
This
50 episodes.
50 episodes, and we have been like consistent. We are here for you every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday,
Um,
we're launching this. And it was just one of those things that I was looking at going, wow, we really have spent a year. And you and I, at the beginning, we said, look, we're going to do this for at least a year. We're going to just do it every week.
yep.
And if we get 2 people listening, if we get 200,000, doesn't matter. We're just going to keep coming. We're going to keep bringing the topics. We're going to keep talking about what people aren't talking about out there,
Yep.
in a way that they're not about movement, about Pilates, about fitness, and about the intersection of those 3 things. And we're just going to keep doing it. And we made a year, and I thought, why not celebrate that a little bit and talk it up a little and see how are things from your end? What are you thinking about it, so far?
So I'm super excited. It's funny. It's like you don't really know what you know until you have to say it, and that's a lot of why I teach. That's why Brian teaches as well.
Yep.
Is it's in talking about something, especially with somebody who has a similar viewpoint, but not the same viewpoint, not the same experience that you learn. And that was really our beginning. Was let's just
Yeah.
talk, because Brian and I, every time we would get together at somewhere, like I remember distinctly outside of the Anaheim Convention Center at an idea conference. I
Yep.
think we chatted for like 3 hours.
At
Just
least.
about, yeah, just about like this and that, and all the things that our nerd brains are excited about that nobody really wants to talk about except us. So there we go.
Yep.
And I'm just super excited that we've gotten that going, that we put all that together. And we've started to do guests, and we've just got a whole big lineup for the next, the next
Yep.
phase of bringing on guests in the fitness world, in the Pilates world, to talk about their experience with different things. And I just super excited. I just think we've got something really, really fun. We were both just in POT Phoenix, and both of us got a lot of really great feedback from people who said, "Hey, I heard you on
Oh
the
yeah.
podcast. I'm addicted every Tuesday." Which
Yep.
was a surprise, because we don't know. We kind of throw this stuff out there into the ether, and God knows what happens to it.
I was going to say, we record twice a week when we're in town because you and I are on the road a lot teaching, either together or separately.
Yeah.
So when we can get together, we'll have a bunch that we'll record and we'll put, in the can, and I'll edit them and put them out. And it's just you and I talking. And we do this multiple times a week anyway, whether we're recording or not.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it's kind of fascinating that when we hit the record button, we pick a topic, we go in deep, we have fun with it. But you never know who's listening. And,
Right.
I get an email or something, people will comment, and it's great. I love hearing that. And I want more. If people want, please, movingconvos@gmail.com is the best way to get in touch with us, or hit us up on, you can DM us on our moving convos on Instagram is probably the one to get us at mostly. Also moving conversations on Facebook. But to hear people come up, I think you and I had the same person from Colombia.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
She was so cute. She came up to me and she was so effusive and just so passionate, saying that she had an hour-long drive every, day to the studio, and she couldn't wait each week for our episode so she could listen to it. She learned so much, and it was so neat to hear that. I was like, wow, okay, so this is getting out there. And there were a lot of people that came up to us because, I was wearing our branded shirt, and they were like, oh, I listen every week. I can't wait to, and I'm like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is
So
awesome.
so we got something going, which, you never know when you start a project whether it's going to go anywhere or not. And our numbers just are building up. And again,
Mhm.
if you're listening, please subscribe because that makes all the
Yes.
difference, and like us and do all those things you're supposed to do.
Like, subscribe.
Um,
Also, YouTube. Watch us on YouTube so you can actually see us converse with one another.
yeah.
I will say, last week's episode that launched, it's going to be like a month and a half from now, when we talk about when this actually gets posted. But with Erica, the feedback has been phenomenal, phenomenal feedback. And I think what it told us is, look, you guys have liked the last year of listening to the two of us talk. But there's a lot of topics that we find fascinating that you and I will try and dive deep into, but we are not the experts. We know,
Absolutely.
20, 30% of something and we enjoy it and we're learning more. But when we can bring someone in like Erica, who could talk about, neuroaerobics and really teach us and go deep. I ate that up. I found her so fascinating and she's a friend of ours, but when do we get a chance to really ask these questions when we're just hanging out having dinner or something like that? Usually, we're talking about personal stuff or, this or that. So it's kind of neat to hear her story and dive deep into this. So, we want to bring more people on that we find fascinating and topics that we find fascinating and invite you to come along and be a fly on the wall. And, if you have any questions, and hopefully before we interview people, we can make an announcement that we're soon going to be interviewing someone and we'll put that on our socials. So if you have any questions about a certain topic, that
Yeah.
you can, ask it there and that we can relay it at the time. Because like I say, we record these, we're probably a month and a half ahead. Because Nora and I are both going to be very busy in July and August. So we thought, let's get as far ahead as we can. But yeah, I can't wait to bring some people on that we find fascinating with topics that we don't know that much about that I can't wait to learn.
Exactly. Exactly. And one of the things that we've just had so much fun with is exactly that, and figuring out who do we want. And like we have a lot of requests for scoliosis, for example. So
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at bringing on some scoliosis experts and people who can really speak from a deeper level of experience. I mean, Brian and I both worked with it a lot, but it's not something that we love, that we're passionate about, that we've created a whole structure around. And so that's the idea, is bringing people who have that. And
Yep.
some of that too is in our world, and this is, I just did a keynote in Phoenix kind of on this topic, but one of the things about our world, our fitness world, is so much of what we do is experimental, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be blunt, like we get an idea in our head, like this is how I'm going to work with this client with a knee problem. And yes, you
Yep.
have some background, like this is how the knee works, and these are the ways, these are the principles of the ideas that are usually thought about when dealing with this, strengthen this, loosen this, whatever the things are. And then we play, right? Then we
Mm-hmm.
take that idea, we take that concept, and we move it into the studio on that particular body.
Yep.
And that's what we all do. And so that's why we really want to bring on people who have been deeply experimenting and exploring certain topics in depth with a whole lot of clients over a whole lot of years.
Yep.
So that we can really benefit from their experience, because we all have our own experience based on the clients and the atmosphere we're in, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, you and I have talked about this before. That's how science
That's how
moves
science
forward.
moves forward. Exactly.
You have a hypothesis. You figure
Hmm.
out, how can I prove or disprove this hypothesis? You
Yep.
try it out. Does it
Yep.
work?
Yep.
It works on this
Yeah.
person. Let's write it
Yeah.
down. Maybe it'll work on this one. It doesn't work on that one. Well, maybe it was a one off, or it's working great. Oh, it's like when I wrote my book, same thing.
Mm.
That's years and years and years of studying the low back and putting it all together in one, concise, point.
Yeah.
That's like,
Yeah.
okay, here's all the information at that moment. And that's what I have to remind people when they take my back class, because I say that was everything I knew at
At that
that date.
moment. Yep.
And now,
It's a spot in time, right?
absolutely. And if I wrote it today, would I put more in and adjust some things? Probably, just because I learned more.
Right.
And I think that's
Exactly.
just normal for us when we're constantly experimenting. And, I've learned a lot from you, in just our conversations, that I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought of it from that point of view. I'm doing something similar, but I'm going to try it from your style and see how that works. And sometimes it works better. Sometimes it doesn't, because it sometimes doesn't translate to fitness world, but other times it does. Or I'll take it into the Pilates studio here and play with it and be like, oh, I love that. So that's how we learn.
That's how we learn, and that's how we grow. And so much of it is exactly this, is like, you tell me something, I think about, that's interesting. And then I see a client and then I try it, right?
Yep.
I mean, if any of you are in studios where one of you or you have gone to a conference and you come back and then you've got to try to consolidate everything you learned and tell your
Yeah.
other instructors what you did, like you've got in service or something like that. You know that feeling, or else you know that look of your clients when you come back from a conference on Monday and they know you've been at a conference and they kind of look at you with fear in their eyes, like, uh-oh, what are they going to do to me today? Like, I know they know something new and I'm going to be the guinea pig. And that's just
Yep.
that's right. That's the nature of it. That's how we grow.
Absolutely. And that's what we need to do with our clients,
Yeah.
because we've said it in the last couple of episodes. If you continue to do the same thing with the same client, exercise done regularly is fantastic. But if you don't change it up, if you don't modify, if you continue to do the same exact thing over and over and over again, your body goes into homeostasis. And then doing the same amount of work, you become efficient at it. And then you start losing ground. Your
Right.
muscles don't need to get stronger anymore. They can actually keep their strength, but get smaller.
They
So
get more
we
efficient. They get more efficient.
get more
Right,
efficient.
they get, because they can do the same thing, but with less effort, and then
Right.
yeah.
Right. Which is why, someone will be on the Stairmaster for 10 years. And when they first started, or Stairmaster really sets my age, I know. Elliptical, we'll call it that, the elliptical. But they'll do that for half an hour every day. Well, at the beginning, they were burning off a certain number of calories and they were working hard and they were getting their heart rate up to, let's say,
Yeah.
150 or
Yep.
whatever.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
after 2 years, now they're doing the same resistance, the same amount of time, and their heart rate gets to 120.
Yeah.
They're more efficient at it. They're burning less calories. They need
Yep.
to switch it up. They need to modify. And I
Yep.
thought that would be a good conversation to have today is, hey, what kind of modifications, exercise modifications, talk about progressions and regressions. That came up big
Mhm.
in some of my classes
Yep.
this weekend, that I thought this would be a great topic for us to cover on our 1-year anniversary.
Exactly. Like we're moving forward. We're contemplating the past and moving forward. That's what we do with clients, right? So, a couple of things that I wanted to start with this conversation.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and one of the key things that this is certainly a hallmark of my work and of Brian's work as well, is if I'm doing anything with a client, if I'm making a choice for that client, I need to have a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, I'm purpose driven, if you will. They've got an hour with me once or twice or 3 times a week, whatever I'm doing. And I want to make that time as efficient and effective for them as possible. So
Yep.
that's kind of an underlying thing for me. Eve Gentry, who was one of the Pilates elders, has had a great phrase, which is, there is no bad movement, only movement badly done.
Yep.
And my corollary to that is, you can do anything you want as long as you can tell me why.
Bingo.
Right. So if you're doing and Instagram is great for this and terrible for this. Somebody's doing something crazy on Instagram. It's like, that's great. It's beautiful. It's dramatic. Why? Right? Why? And if you can
Exactly.
tell me why, be as beautiful and dramatic as you want. The other thing too that I'm always looking at is this appropriate for this client? Is this appropriate for the next client? You
Yep.
know, and those are just things I want to think about, is what's the purpose? And then what, really where you're trying to get to with that particular client in front of you,
Yep.
personalizing it.
We talked last week when we had someone for an interview. I have why days where I will go up to my staff
I
and
love
I'll
this.
watch them do an exercise and I'll walk behind them and I'll just say why and walk away. And by the end of the day, they have to come and tell me why they did that exercise with that particular client, what was the reasoning, and what was their mindset. Now, I do this all the time anyway, because we all have our own points of view, right? Everybody does. So I'll be watching and I'll be thinking, I wouldn't do that with that client. Why are they doing that? And so I will say, why? And they'll say, oh, because I saw this, this, and this. And so I did this, this. And I was like, oh, makes perfect sense. Gotcha. You had a reason. It wasn't that I was looking at Instagram and I saw that they lifted this viper in this crazy way and threw it around their neck. And I thought that'd be great for neck strengthening. It's nothing like that. It was they had a specific reasoning for the exercise. I'm like, perfect. Love it. Love it. But they
And
have to have a reason.
really, whether you're working with rehab, where reasons are, if any, often more important, and progressions or regressions are something you're going to do all the time, or you're working with a normal, healthy client who you're just trying to get stronger and fitter, in either of those cases, the why is really important. You know,
Yeah.
where are you trying to get to? What are their goals? To Brian's point a few weeks ago, he talked about both the client's goals, which could be abstract-ish, like I want to be able to ski, or I want to be able to lift up my grandkids. And then what are the movement goals that you have as a trainer that are going to get that client to their personal goal, right? So I need to strengthen their quads, or I need to, get some more mobility in their ankles, or whatever it is that you have to
Yep.
do, and really keeping focused on that. I know for me that because I've always worked that way, clients, it's hard to get rid of clients. If you want client retention, if you have a why and you have a purpose and they know what that is and they know that you're both working for it together, they will never leave you.
Never.
Right. I mean, that's also a thing for just client retention and just making it
Yep.
successful for you and for them.
And it's something you need to be reminded of because look, I'm not going to say you go through this, but I do. We get stuck in ruts
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
clients. We do. We've seen
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
same client at the same time
Yeah.
for, the
5
last
years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you know their body inside and out. You know every
Yeah.
injury that they've had.
Yeah.
You know their goals, you know exactly what's going on. So you kind of go into a little bit of autopilot.
Yep.
And occasionally that autopilot needs to be shaken up
Yeah.
and you need to be reminded. And occasionally it'll be the client who comes to me and says, what's our focus? We've
Mm-hmm.
been doing this for a while now, and I've healed this, I've healed, whatever has happened to their body, they made modifications and now their body feels great and everything. And I'll be, oh, we're working on fitness, we're working on these goals or whatnot. And they'll say, okay. And I'll say, tell you what, let's go over a goal. Let's do some goal setting at the
Yep.
beginning of your next session while you're warming up or while you're doing your release work. Let's go over some goal setting and reestablish that. And sometimes it has to come from me because the client is just happy to come in twice a week, do
Yeah.
their
Forever.
workout and feel like they're doing great because they are staying fit and they're able to lift their grandkids or they're able to, play tennis or whatever they want to do. But it's still important for me to come up and say, okay, let's do a little goal setting. Let's do a little short-term goal for the next, 3 months. And then, let's take a look at a year out. What would you like to accomplish? You've accomplished where you started to where you are. Sometimes they need to be shown. You've come this far.
Right. And this
Now let's look
is
beyond that.
farther than you thought you were going to go. So where do you
Mm,
want to go next? Where can we move ahead?
exactly. Exactly. So I find that's very important.
And one of the things that always occurs to me too is, and we talked about this a little bit at the very beginning, when you've been working with a client for a long time, and I can think of a couple of clients I worked with for 16 years, which is a long time. They stop hearing you.
Yes.
That's the other thing. And those are the clients who you go away for a vacation, you're gone for a couple of weeks, some other trainer is working with them, and they come back from that and they go, oh, they gave me the best cue. Right. And it's something you've been telling them for the last 16 years, but they have stopped hearing you. So
Yep.
again, that just shaking it up. And sometimes just like, we're going to just do something completely new today. You've not done any of these exercises. We're just going to shake it up. Again, just
Yep.
to get the nervous system awake, to get things going. So now we're talking a little bit about like progressions in a way,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep. Exactly. And we all think about progressions.
Mhm.
I like to always say progression and regression, and I use them
Yes.
both together
Yeah.
because the story I tell, I'm going to tell it right now. I was at a conference, uh, idea conference, word conference, and Douglas Brooks. I was in
Yeah.
one of his classes.
Mhm.
Now, Douglas, super high level. He was teaching a class on the Bosu, and this was when the Bosu was still probably only about a year, 2 years out. Uh, and that's basically half a ball on a platform. You put it on the ground so it doesn't slide around.
The dome.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a dome, and you can do a ton of stuff on it. And this Douglas can jump from there, land on a ball, go back and jump back on it. He was training, I think, the snowboarding team for a while. I mean,
Mhm.
he trains high level, so he can do all of these things. Okay, great. And we're learning these really intense exercises. And I have a staff member there who halfway through the class, whispered to me, I don't have a single client that can do any of these exercises. I don't know why I'm here. I'm wasting my time. I can barely do any of these things. And she was an athlete and everything. And I just said, okay, change your thought process. Take that last exercise. Now regress it. Now regress it again. Now regress it again and again and again
Yeah.
and again and again until you've regressed it 10 times, made it easier. And suddenly I say, now, can all your clients do that? And she's like, well, yeah. I said, good. Now you have 10 exercises to get you to that progress point that you're seeing Douglas do today, that all these fitness instructors are doing together here in this class.
That's awesome.
You know, but you can regress it all the way down. And for the client in front of you, maybe you have to regress it 3 times or 5 times or whatever it is. But now you've got all those exercises that you know where you can get to. And then when you get there, you can progress beyond.
And one of the things I love about, you said that so clearly, and I just want to underline that a little bit, is one of the things that is that actually Joy Paleo put into the Pilates teacher training program that we do at Balanced Body is these little grids, which are kind of like, if you're going to end up at, let's say, star on the reformer. For those who don't know, it's a massive side plank, moving side plank. How do you get there? What are the skills you need to build to get to that ta-da moment?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's that same thing. It's kind of like, and honestly, that is the hardest thing for most of our students to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't, like, they're always come up against that question, and there's always questions and confusion and like, well, how do I do this? And what's the approach? And what we're trying to do, and Brian's talking about it here, is what I think of as clinical reasoning or movement reasoning, breaking it down. What are the skills that you're trying to get that client to be able to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you take something like a squat, starting with something simple, something like a squat, like a deep squat, whatever their depth is. Okay, and I've got a client with knee and hip problems.
Mm-hmm.
So that is not accessible to them at this time. Right? So what have I got to do? I've got to step this back to the point where I can work on strength of all the legs. I could work on mobility, particularly of the knee and the hip, but also the ankle is going to be part of that. And I've got to take it down to the point where they can do something that is successfully going in the proper direction to become a squat at some point.
Yep.
Right. So, in my world, it would be footwork on the reformer. That's a squat lying down with less weight. Right. And just playing with, maybe I decrease the range of motion because they can't go very deep yet. Maybe I play with having them on the the foot plate or the jump board, just so that they've got a different surface to work on. And then we build up, right? We start light, and then we build up, and then we build up, and then we build up. We work on mobility and we work on strength. And so that's often where we're thinking. I think Brian and I both often think that exactly that way is, okay, if I want to get somebody up to skiing, going on their annual ski trip, which they only do for 1 week a year.
Yep.
What do I have to work on? I've got to work on strength in their legs. I've got to work on strength in their hips. I've got to work on, core control. I've got to work on balance. And then you break that down and figure out, okay, well, how am I going to approach that? Where are they now? What level are they at now? Again, it might be 5 regressions back. Maybe they're on level 2. Maybe they're on level 3. And then how do I build them up?
Yeah. Well, in one of the classes I was teaching, one of my clients during the pandemic, we started doing things on video, and that made it a little more challenging just because I'm not in his basement and he had a limited amount of equipment. So I had to become a little bit more creative, which is fun. And I wanted to teach him how to get up off the floor. So for him, what I did, and like I said, I taught this in one of my classes, is I said, okay, we're going to break down all the different maneuvers. So you're on the ground on your belly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the first piece, go into all fours. Be able to push your body, shifting your hips back onto all fours. And I'll have him practice just that exercise, moving up and down. It's not a push-up because he's moving his hips back. He's using a little mechanical advantage. Then it's from there to a high kneel. So he has to go up from all fours to sitting up on just his knees. And we'll practice that. And then I might do a little bit of those, what I call kneeling squats, where you sit your hips back onto your heels and then sit up tall.
Exactly. Yep.
Get the hips involved. Then I do something called get up on the horse, which is swing a leg around so that you're going from both kneeling on both knees to having one foot in front of you flat on the floor. So you're staggered. and then stand up from there, which is the hardest part, obviously, for most people. But just to be able to get that, I've broken it down into a bunch of different exercises, and we'll do one at a time, getting better, getting stronger at each. And eventually you put it all together and suddenly they're on their stomach. They sit up, they swing their leg forward, they stand up and they say, I couldn't do that a month ago. It's like, uh-huh. And now you have a skill that's going to help you be able to get up and down off the floor with your grandkids or
and
whatever.
survive a fall, right?
Or
Which is
exactly.
critical, right? So that's like getting up off of the floor for any of our older clients, any of our clients
Yep.
really, but our older clients particularly, is critical. It's a life skill that you need because sometimes
You
you fall
need
and you have
that.
to get up. You have to be able to get up. Yeah,
Absolutely. And
nice.
it is about progression,
Mhm.
because what I was doing before this was just teaching basically like stationary lunge.
Uh-huh.
And letting them hold on to a chair or something like that and bring their knee closer and closer to the ground. But what I found is it's the same thing with getting up out of a chair, standing up out of a chair versus a squat. Neurologically, it should be the same thing, but it's a different activity. It's completely different. And it dawned on me when I was doing that I was making little progress having them do that stationary lunge. I'm thinking, why am I not? And I said, because it's a different exercise. It's a different activity.
Training is stunningly specific,
Yeah.
right? It is stunningly specific. Like we get good at exactly what we do,
Yes.
period. Um, and that's just something to really be aware of when you're working with your clients, that you think, and I see this a lot in my fellow teachers, is they kind of think, oh, this is a good idea because my teacher told me that, or this should be a
Mhm.
good thing for this, and so they just give that client that, and they're hoping that at some point it will translate into functional movement, but you
Right.
have to translate what they're doing into the functional movement that they're going to do.
You
Like
have
you
to
have
practice
to
what you
do that.
want.
You have to practice what you want, not
Yep.
what you not what looks kind of like what you want. Like footwork
Right.
on the reformer can lead you to a squat, but then you've also got to take all those
Well,
ideas and turn them upright and do a squat,
yep. Yep.
and those are the things that are really important and really just significant. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in general, people get very comfortable with doing what comes natural, what they're
Yeah.
comfortable
What's
with,
easy. Yeah.
what's
They're familiar
easy.
with.
It's sort of like the client who enjoys stretching is usually the flexible client. The
Yes,
one who
exactly.
likes doing chest presses is usually pretty strong in their chest or
Yep.
whatever it is.
Yep.
What feels comfortable to them, what they're strong at, what they feel good about is what they like to do. Usually they need the other things,
Right.
that
Because
go
it's
along
not what
with
they
it.
want to do. Yes.
Exactly. But also we need to make those modifications in their workouts to, again, aim for their goal. What is the purpose behind all of those exercises? But also be able to constantly adjust. Uh, I was listening to, I've heard you say this, and I've heard a number of teachers say this. I'm very big on variety.
Mhm.
Uh, I was in my resiliency class. I said, look, if I'm going to do an exercise like a squat, okay, I could do 3 sets of a squat, okay, but that's going to take me 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is, depending on the rest time, okay. But if all I'm doing is a regular squat, that's kind of boring. Could I do a squat where I'm picking something up and then putting it back
Mhm.
down again? That's a different type of
Exactly.
squat. Can
Yep.
I do a squat where I'm holding something and as I
Uh-huh.
go into the squat, shift the weight to the side and then stand up and bring it back to center? Oh, that's a different type of squat. Can I
Mhm.
do a little shuffle where I step to the side and squat, then back to the center, then step to the other side and squat and back to the center? Now I've done 4 sets of squats, but
Right.
they've all it's variety. I'm hitting the body from different angles. I'm working different muscles because I'm hitting all those variety of angles. So I'm really training in a three-dimensional way. Then I can add some rotation, maybe stand up on one foot. And what was funny is in this class, I had only planned on doing like 4 or 5. We came up with 10. And literally, we were just playing. And I was like, what about if we tried this? Let's play with this. And they were like, oh, that's great. What if we did this? That's great too. Let's play with that. And going back and forth. And they realized, hey, you can take an exercise that you need to do, like a squat, and be able to modify it in so many ways that I can now do 5 sets of the same exercise, but one set of each, and they're all different, but they're all so beneficial. And they're similar to what I was going to do before anyway.
So that's creating variety,
Yep.
right? Which means it's challenging the body in different ways. Because
Yep.
just doing a plain old squat, like with your arms coming, down and up or whatever, is different than doing that with a weight or doing that with a rotation or doing that in some other way. So you've
Yep.
got that variety. You also have what I think of as sometimes when I do a variation or a progression, and even just sometimes a variation, because I would sometimes say like that isn't necessarily harder or easier, it's just different, right?
Yep.
Is to wake up the nervous system.
That's what I was
And
thinking. Yeah.
and I think about some clients that I work with who we'd like to warm up on the chair. So I typically do like seated leg pumps on the chair. Now these guys have both been doing Pilates for years now, like 20 plus years, with various different teachers in various different ways. And so we do it, and it's like you can tell like they're not very engaged. Like they've done this a million times. Their motor control is like they're all set, life is fine, blah blah blah. And so it's like, okay, what else can we do? So in this case with them, I added hand weights. So the legs are going, but we're adding hand weights. We're adding up and we're adding out, and we're coming here and we're coming there, and we add some rotation and we add some single leg. So again, it's waking up the nervous system, because then we're not staying in the same flatline plane,
Yep.
Like I think about another client I have who can do like a full super advanced workout and pretty much talk through the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
She just is like, she's very physically adept and she really likes to talk. And I know when she's talking, she's not paying attention. Like she just has the ability to do this stuff without really thinking about it.
Autopilot.
Yeah. So for her, like some of the modifications I do for her is I have to add things like balance challenges. Okay, now we're going to do this on the spine fitter. We're going to do this on the roller. We're going to do this on a ball. We're going to do this on a balance pad. I've got to add something that wakes up the nervous system just to get that learning process happening again in their body and in their mind.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's another reason why I like adding the variety
Yeah.
in each workout is, again, they can do a similar type of exercise,
Yeah.
but you're challenging them mentally, you're challenging their nervous system, you're challenging their coordination, you're challenging their motor function, all of these things that we need to challenge that as a child, we just played. We
Mhm.
just went outside and someone would be playing something and you join in. And if you didn't know what you were doing, you figured it out and your body would learn how to do it. And you may be terrible at first. And then within a couple of, minutes, you're getting better. And by the end of the, afternoon, you're a rock star at it. Well, we don't nowadays, my body doesn't do that like it used to. It takes a little while to sort of get acclimated to whatever new activity there is, especially if it does challenge them. I do something with the Viper. In case you don't know what a Viper is, go ahead and you can YouTube it or Google it. But it's basically a tube that has handles, and it's a rubber tube. It has two handles on one side and one on the other. And what I'll do is I'll do that step out squat, either a rotational where my feet are together and then I'll step out 90 degrees and squat. So I go into almost a sumo squat and then back into the other side, or I'll step out to the side and back to center. But with the Viper, I do what washing machine. I don't know if I came up with this or someone else did, but basically as I'm stepping out, I'm going to turn it 1, 2, 3 squat, then 1, 2, 3 to the other side and squat. So my upper body's getting involved. The heavier the Viper, the more my upper body has engagement. I have to stabilize my spine. As I'm turning a heavier Viper, my core is engaged because it wants my
Absolutely, to
whole body to
stabilize you.
twist.
Yep. Yep.
And all of a sudden you see a client and the choreography, they get so flustered and they can't figure it out.
Yep.
And maybe they don't get it the first day, but over time they begin to get it. And then they say, I love this exercise because it feels good. It's working a lot of things. They say, I feel my core engage. They're doing their squat. They're doing all this, they're doing a lot within a single movement pattern. And then what do? I change it again and make it a little harder. And I change it again and make it a little harder. Again, letting them advance neurologically, motor functioning, everything gets better and they get stronger. To me, it's not just about doing more reps or doing more weight. It's about adding to the complexity sometimes of the exercise, because that adds more to it, in my opinion, than just putting another 5-pound plate on a machine.
And thinking about what we talked about with Erica in one of our last episodes, she talks about neuroaerobics, and she talks about just keeping the brain and the body working together in novel ways, right? And certainly from a younger client, some, but from my older clients, like just giving them I like one simple. This is very simple, but I've done this with a few of them. These are my clients in their 70s, and coordination is becoming challenged for them. Both balance and coordination are just not as strong as it used to be.
Yep.
So I just have like either a little moon box or a little step up, like a sort of a low 6-inch step up of whatever kind. And I'm just going to say, okay, so step up with the right leg and step down, left leg and step down, right leg and step down, left leg and step down. Okay, now right leg, right leg. Okay, now left leg. Like, so they have to listen, they have to respond, they have to react. Simple stuff.
Yep.
But that, like the nervous system amp up that you see on that, like, oh, I have to respond, I have to think, I have to be present. It's just simple, and you're taking more complex versions of that. But then, like with something like you're talking about, even with the chair work I talked about with the hand weights. Okay, so we're going to do 8, and then we do 8, and then we do 8. Now we're going to do one of these, and then one of these, and then one of these, and then one of these, and you're going to repeat that pattern, right? So then they've got to put more things together in a more complex way, because that's what life brings us, right? Life doesn't bring us predictability in terms of physical movement.
Yep. We talked about with Erica, I love to do the clock lunge, and I call out the numbers.
Yep.
I'll say, whatever I say, that's where you're going to lunge to. So 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then I start, I'll repeat 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And it gets them present. They have to focus. They have to pay attention. And it does put them a little bit more on their game. And you can see they have to focus. And it's great to get them to, so they're not on autopilot their whole workout, which, let's face it, sometimes we all get that way.
Yeah,
and it's good to have, I say I need a trainer because I want someone to do that to me.
Yeah,
because I'll create new exercises just for my own body. It's like,
but you can't surprise yourself.
But can't surprise yourself.
You can't surprise yourself. It's just, that's not how it works, right? You can't like say, okay, I'm going to surprise you. Like, what's coming. Yeah,
exactly. And that's a challenge to do by yourself. So I can work on complexity, but you're right. You can't get that surprise aspect. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. There's something else I wanted to mention, something that I call regress to progress. Okay. Or technically it's vice versa. If I have a client, and I learned this with my 80-year-old, his name was Ernie, since passed away. He was like a grandfather to me. I didn't really get to know my grandparents that much. So I was working with him, and I worked with him, he and his wife, 3 days a week for at least an hour each. And they just became like family. And I was going to visit them at home for a long time. And standing on one leg was so difficult for him. He just did not have the balance at 80 years old. So we kept working at it. Finally, I said, I'm going to challenge you. Like, that wasn't challenging enough. I put him on an RX pad, a little wobble pad, a spongy pad.
Yeah.
And when he first stood on it with both legs, you could see the fear in his eyes a little bit. And I gave him something to hold on to, and I had a gait belt. I was, he was safe. And I had him stand on one leg while holding on to something lightly. And you could see he was trying so much harder. I could see his ankle was working. I could see his knee everything was vibrating a little bit, trying to figure out what to do. You can see his brain was really working. His whole center of gravity was trying to figure this out because he was on something super unstable. Now, remember, he couldn't stand on one leg.
Right.
We did that for about 2 or 3 minutes. I took the pad away and I said, now, without holding on to anything, try and stand on one leg. He lifted his leg up and he stood there for 30 seconds without a problem. And he said, how'd you do that? Because we did it before and he couldn't do it. I almost overwhelmed his nervous system and got everything firing to the point that he was almost too much.
Yeah.
And then when I regressed it again back to what I really wanted him to do, he did it without a problem.
That's really interesting, especially with balance.
Yeah.
Because, I think about a client of mine that had some very rare version of muscular dystrophy, something, where she really didn't have any dorsiflexion of her ankles at all, like barely enough. Like she really wasn't flat even on her feet. She's just like both calves were super, super tight. And it was a muscular dystrophy issue. So they're like, we would work on it, but the tissue was not going to give up. And so her balance was really bad. And she loved to be active, and she traveled a whole bunch, and she just was nervous about being that imbalanced, because, you know, they'd go hiking and stuff and she'd fall down and she'd have to get up, and just wasn't great. So I used to do an exercise with her. This was before I had the Coraline, where I would just have her stand and just do, you know, standing leg pumps. For those of you who know the chair, standing in the chair, put the foot up on the pedal and push down, right? So they've got to challenge their balance some. They can hold on to the handles, and they're just getting a little bit of a balance challenge. And I do it in different angles and with different things. And that was always a challenge for her. She would always like look at it and grab onto the handles. Then I got the Coraline in my studio. For those of you who don't know, the Coraline is like a big tray that has carts in it that can move with band resistance. So it's kind of like spring resistance, but with bands independently. And I just had her do really simple, just like pushing, like she was walking, like she was on that, and she was just going back and forth with those carts, standing up, going back and forth with those carts. And then doing a few other things, some side work and some other things, like it was about 3 exercises. And then we came over to the chair, and I said, hey, let's check this out. She didn't even reach for the handles. So it's just like with your client. She just stood up, she put one foot on the pedal, and she started pushing down. And it was the first time she'd ever done it without reaching for the pedals. So again, it was like I overloaded her nervous system with a bunch of balance stuff, although it wasn't specifically balance stuff, but it ended up being that, because it's a dynamic surface that you're on, right? It's like ice skating kind of. And that just got her nervous system to the point where it could tolerate that next piece. So again, that was where that progress to regress, right? That's what you're kind of saying, is like, make it harder so that nervous system and its nervous system at that point has to wake up. And that helps you to be able to go back and do a simpler task.
Yeah.
And that's neurological.
Yeah. That's just it. It wasn't
brain.
Muscular. That was the brain.
That's the brain.
Because muscularly, nothing changed in that 5 minutes that I tested it, did the intervening exercise, and then retested it. His body did not change significantly.
No.
It's how his body processed balance.
Exactly.
That changed.
Exactly.
Now, did it last? No. And we had to continue to do it over and over again. But over time, it lasted longer and longer and longer, and his balance got so much better.
Yes.
But it was just that moment that, you know, you get so frustrated and you're doing the same thing over and over again. And I'm beating my head against the wall thinking, okay, this is going to feel good eventually. No, it's not. I got to figure something out. I got to do something different.
Yes.
So literally it was just like, try this.
Yep, exactly.
It's going to be super hard. But my brain was telling me there's something with this. I think this is going to work. I don't know how it's going to work, but afterwards I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. You overwhelmed his nervous system. You got things firing differently. You got him focusing differently. You got him orienting his body and organizing his muscle, and things just worked.
So one other piece here, we've talked, this is great. I've really enjoyed this conversation, Brian. Thank you. It's like just how you think about these things. And I'm hoping this helps you guys out there too. One other thing too is, you know, very often when I have to do modifications, rather than just regressions or progressions, it's because there's a particular issue going on.
Yeah.
You know, a hip issue, a knee issue, a foot issue, something like that. So, you know, for example, I've got a client who has really bad plantar fasciitis at the moment. And she gets a lot of pain when she stands up on her foot, right? At this point, it's just not a great thing. And in Pilates, we do many things barefoot, and that's kind of typical. So lately it's like, okay, you're not going to take your shoes off. We're going to just keep you in your shoes for this session. Either that, or else I won't do a lot of footwork at all. But, you know, it's like, sometimes I want to do a little bit of that just to keep the muscles moving, keep this thing stretching out, keep the strength going. But I want that support underneath. So that's, you know, that's a modification I do. Putting, you know, adjusting the head position. If somebody's lying supine and they need a neck roll, or they need to have their head higher because they're very thick in their chest, putting something like somebody with hip and knee things, even on the trap table, putting something underneath their knees just to relieve tension on the hip and the knee, if that's an issue. So there's also those kind of modifications of taking the equipment or lightening up the equipment or increasing the support for the equipment. There's all those other little ways too that just allow a client who maybe can't do something, or you don't think can do something, to be able to do it. You know, like the client I was talking about earlier with that muscular dystrophy. when I was doing things like footwork on the reformer, I mean, she was strong as an ox, but just had no dorsiflexion.
Yeah.
So, I would work on the board. We'd work on the board to get as much proprioception as we could through the feet. And she had very little range of motion in terms of the depth. So we'd have to increase the weight because she was doing a tiny little knee bend, because as soon as she did it at
Mm.
all, her heel popped up. But we'd put on like all the springs, and then she could work in a small range. Then we'd slowly let that heel come up and start to work dynamically some of that ankle stuff that she, again, was not able to access in any other exercise. So that's that other thing too, is just getting creative with how am I gonna get this to happen for this particular client with these particular limitations.
Yeah. Creativity is so important in that way.
Yeah.
How we've all had the client, my favorite one, my bookkeeper. She's basically like my sister. She's been with me since the beginning, over 15, 16 years. Now she's in Florida, but she still does my books, and I still help her out all the time. She asks me, what should I do with this? And so, we still are working together. But I would create a perfect session. I mean, the exercises, I'm like, this rocks. I am going to rock her world. This is going to be the best workout. And she comes in and she goes, I strained my hamstring. I can't. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like,
Yep.
so literally it's like crumple up. Okay, throw that away. What are we going to do today now? And
Yep.
sometimes we have to just allow our brains to let go of
Mm-hmm.
what we thought we were going to do
Yep.
and how we were going to do it. And just take a look at the client in front of you today. One of my clients who came in today, he's my golfer. He golfs a lot. It's like he'll tell me, I'm golfing this afternoon. I'm going to golf right after this. So you know what? Whatever I was planning, nope, I'm going to prepare you for today. We're going to do a lot of
Exactly.
rotation. We're going to wake things up. I want to make sure you can do things properly to make sure you're not going to hurt yourself.
Right.
So I sort of have a routine in the back of my head that, okay, we need to do a little bit more of this kind of stuff. But again, he tells me at the last second. So it's like, okay, so we have to have that creativity, in our back pocket to be able to turn on a dime sometimes. I
And,
wanted to make one
yeah.
more mention of something
Yeah.
that you said about, using pillows and things like that. That also be willing and look for changes in their body
Mm-hmm.
that they may not need those modifications the same way they used to. I
Yeah,
had a
good point.
client,
Yeah.
Stan, who loved them to pieces. There's this company that came around. I was teaching at one of the fitness conferences, and someone came and said, here, I made these. They were little cushions at different heights, everything from half an inch. It went half an inch, inch and a half, 2 inches. And they were hexagonal. So, and you could stack them in different ways and put them under their head to keep their head neutral. I loved them. I thought they were great. The company didn't make it, but I still have them. I love these pieces. But when I first started with Stan, he needed most of them. I think he needed 3 out of the 4 heights
Mm.
just because of where his head was. And I started watching over time. I'm looking at him thinking, I don't think he needs as much. So I'd take one out and see if he'd notice. And his head would sit back and he'd be fine. And he's still in neutral. And over time, as I'm getting some thoracic extension and I'm getting some retraction, his head is going lower and lower until it was just on the 1-inch one.
Nice.
And I thought, and when I pointed that out to him, he said, I never would have imagined that. Because I mean, he was up,
Yeah.
he was up quite a bit. And
Yeah.
suddenly he's down to just a little bit. And so be willing to continue to look at those modifications that you're making, because I do that. He taught me this because I did it even for myself. I always got the biggest pillows out because I got a big thoracic cavity. But as you know, I'm also a little kyphotic. Well, I've been working like crazy on that the last few years. Well, guess what? I'm about a half an inch to an inch now difference where I used to be 3 to 4 inches. I've worked at it. So I just need a little proppage of my head. And I'm thinking, wow, I could actually do this. So watch for those modifications and see if you really need them. As their low back gets better, do they need to be flat
Yeah.
backed anymore? Do they
Yep.
need to
Yep.
have
Yep.
a pillow under their belly every time they lay
Yeah.
on their stomach?
Yep.
Those modifications may move in time and shift.
Yeah. Let them.
Yeah, and let them.
Yeah. Check them out. Don't get attached to them.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Don't get attached to them because
Yeah.
they will change as their bodies change, and they should.
Yes, exactly. Ideally, if things are working,
Exactly.
you should be making some progress somewhere.
Exactly, exactly. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to, while it was still fresh in my mind, I wanted
No,
to
great.
make mention not to get hung up on those because, the client who says, I always have to have a pillow under my stomach every time I lie down.
Yeah,
And then suddenly they're lying down without it and they think, oh, I haven't for a while, have I? I'm like, no, you don't need it anymore.
exactly.
You're
Exactly. It's
doing great.
progress. And
You've
that
made
usually helps them to feel
progress.
like they don't need the prop. They don't need the help. They can actually just do it, which is always for them. It's like, oh, wow, I've progressed. Really important.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, kind of wrapping this up a little bit, I think we've had a wonderful.
This is neat. Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, for you guys out there, and for all the instructors that I work with, some of this is, of course, paying attention to your client every
Yeah.
session, right? Try not for you to get bored, which I know can happen. Try not to let them get in a rut. So those kind of things. Understanding what skills you're trying to build, right?
Mhm.
And then make that path to that. Like, be clear on what that path is. I loved your example of getting up off the floor. Step
Mm.
1 for a while, step 2 for a while, step 3 for a while. Build up to the actual skill you want to do. And then just really staying focused on where you're trying to get that client to. What are your goals and what are their
Yeah.
goals, and how do you guys work together to get there? And I
Yep.
love that progress to regress. Give them something really hard, and sometimes then you back down, and their skill level is increased in that easier skill. So that was wonderful. Really, really love this.
Yeah. I learned a lot too. I love talking about these things. And when we first, on Wednesday, when we were talking, we are like, what are we going to talk about? And we had this one listed and
Yes.
we never sort of did anything. And we are like, well, we could talk about this. Yeah, I think this will be fun. And then we get deep into it. And
Mhm.
I think I don't know about you, but I find a lot of our conversations over the last year have really sort of developed like that, that we think, oh, well, we could probably talk about this for 15 or 20 minutes. And then an
Right.
hour goes by and we're thinking we're going to have to do a deep dive because we've
Yeah.
hit the tips of the trees. We can still get into the roots. We can still go deep with this.
And
And
what
that's great.
And one of the things that I love about talking to you, and this is probably what Brian and I have always sort of had it in common, if you will, is both of us are educators, and both of us have that ability to kind of see what we do and then try to explain what we do in a relatively straightforward way. I mean, that's certainly, I think, my goal, and I know that's your goal. So how
Yeah.
clear can I be? Like, and I just feel like so many things came out today that were ways I hadn't put them together. I hadn't articulated them as much because I haven't talked about this particular topic with a group. But talking to you, it's like, oh, now I have a really clear way of presenting. How do you regress? How do you progress? What are the things you're thinking about? What are the skills you're looking at? Love it. So it's really exciting.
Very
Yay.
cool.
Session,
Very
session
good.
50. Yeah.
Exactly. I was just going to say, before we close out today's show, I really want to express gratitude to you, first of all,
Yeah.
Nora.
And you.
It was a year and a half ago. You and I had been talking about working together, and you were coming at a point in your life where you wanted to do something different. I'm always looking to expand and to challenge myself intellectually as well as teaching wise. And we came together and you said, we're going to do a podcast. That's where we're going to start. And I was like, awesome. I did radio. I could figure this out. And you were like, good, because I can't, but
Yeah, I got nothing.
I
No,
could talk.
clueless.
So we
Right.
got that part.
Yeah.
And then the two of us got together in Monterey, California in a hotel room
Hmm.
and we had equipment. You had bought the equipment and brought it in. And it was like, okay, how are we going to do this? Let's figure it out. And from that first session where we were literally just talking and trying to figure all this out, I think we've gotten a little better each week.
I hope
I
so.
think we've gotten a little deeper. We understand the show more and what we want to do. And I just want to say thank you to you, as well as to everyone who does listen, for being curious, for wanting
Mhm.
to learn,
Yeah.
for wanting to learn from each other, because I think that's what drives you and I and why we work so well together is I'm curious, you're curious. We want to learn from each other and learn from other people. And I can't tell you, anytime I learn something, it's like, I can't wait to tell Nora because
Exactly, I
I want to
know.
see, I want to see what your point of view is because you may say, oh yeah, and I know it from this way and that way. And it just expands our brain. And for us to be able
Absolutely.
to come weekly and be able to share our information, our knowledge, and more importantly, our curiosity. I think it's been an awesome year. And
Me
I
too.
can't wait to continue to do this.
Oh, thank you, Brian. That's also true. All I can say on that is ditto. I feel exactly the same way. So many things have just gotten clearer from talking
Yeah.
about them, as they often do. And what you said earlier, which is that these people like Erica, like I don't get a chance to talk to her about her nerd stuff, right? About like
Yeah.
what she actually thinks about neuroaerobics and how she thinks about active aging, and that stuff is just so super exciting and so interesting. And we've got a really nice list of guests with all kinds of different perspectives that I'm so looking forward to talking to.
Yeah.
Again, to satisfy our curiosity, to be blunt, like we want to bring people on that we want to learn from. That's our deal. That's our gig, and we're so excited
Absolutely.
about
Yeah.
it.
I said when we were putting our list together, we just kept sort of adding to it and adding to it. And I said, this is going to be awesome. So
Yeah.
look forward to each month having one, maybe even two guests for us
Mhm.
to do a dive on a topic that we're very interested in and by people that we find fascinating.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's the important part. We find them fascinating and we want to dive into what they know and that, and hopefully you'll find them just as fascinating. And, maybe even a topic that you're thinking, well, maybe this sounds a little interesting. We hope that at the end, you're like, wow, that was so cool. I learned so much.
Exactly.
Well, that was an
All right.
awesome episode. One
Thank you so
year.
much.
Woohoo.
Loved it. 1 year. Woohoo, we did it.
All right. So
Consistency, persistence.
exactly. Exactly. Just keep showing up and keep talking. Our social media, again, Instagram at Moving Combos, Facebook, Moving Conversations. Hit us up on email. Feel free, please. DM us. Email is moving convos at gmail.com. And we always respond. So, again, thank you guys for the last year. Thank you
Yeah.
for finding us. And hopefully, we continue to educate, enlighten, and entertain. And for Nora St. John, I'm Brian Ritchie. We'll see y'all next week.
Bye, guys.